Another week in the Big 12, some surprises and some disappointments. We're going to break it all down. It's Anthony Totri and Eric Ruby here for PHNX Sun Devils. We do this every single weekend after the Big 12 slate is over, breaking it all down. But let's start with Friday, Totri. Arizona State, TCU, obviously, we cover the Sun Devils. We did a 2-hour-long post-game show involving some great football breakdowns and some shenanigans as well. But Arizona State taking down a ranked TCU team at home. Best game of the season from Sam Leavitt, one of the best from Jordyn Tyson. Raleek Brown put up 134 yards, and TCU loses despite playing pretty well themselves.
Yeah, this was the most important game that Arizona State has played, really dating back to that BYU game in 2024 that ultimately was a massive piece in the Sun Devils going to the Big 12 championship. And we all know what transpired in the postseason. But yeah, I mean, this was the game, the opportunity that you saw the Arizona State offense really start to find itself a little bit, a really good balance of on the ground with Raleek Brown and Sam Leavitt's legs, but also through the air, right? All season long, we've been talking about Jordyn Tyson this, Jordyn Tyson that. And don't get me wrong, Jordyn Tyson was still the main entree of this 5-course meal, but it was nice if you're a Sun Devil fan to see Derek Eusebio, to see Jaron Hamilton, to see Shimon Mateer again, Malik McLean, all these guys really get involved in the offense. But Eric, let's be real, the defense was the story. They were going up against one of, if not the best quarterback to this point in the season in Josh Hoover. And for the most part, he was contained.
Yeah, this defense is playing like the best unit in the Big 12. Highly recommend if you did not watch that game and you are a Big 12 fan to watch it, because I think these are two teams that are going to be contending for that Big 12 championship, or at least to be in the game by the end of the season. Just because TCU lost doesn't mean TCU ain't good. And ASU, now they go into a bye week playing Utah. We'll talk about Utah here in a second. But before we get to Saturday's game, there was one more game on Friday, and it was another crazy game, another 27-24 result. This time, Houston is 4-0, beating Oregon State with some heroics at the end. Are you buying Houston? Is Houston for real, or is this more Oregon Stating?
I'm going to be honest with you, man, and Houston fans may not like this answer, but I was almost more in on Houston when they were 3-0 instead of 4-0, because watching them in Corvallis Friday night, this is a team in Houston that was undefeated. Connor Weigman, Willie Fritz looked like the Cougs were starting to be like, okay, maybe this is a team to watch out for as a middle of the pack competitor in the Big 12. You go into Corvallis, which, hand up, it's a very difficult place to play, and I think Houston figured that out on Friday. But at the end of the day, you played an 0-4 team in Oregon State, and you should have won this game handedly. Ultimately, it goes into overtime. Oregon State really let this one slip away down the stretch. They had every opportunity realistically to win this ball game, but you got to tip your cap to Houston. A win is a win at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if I told you Houston was 4-0 at the start of the season, we would have been surprised pleasantly. I think all of us expected Houston to be a little bit better this season, but a 4-0, no matter how you slice it, is 4-0.
A win is a win, Cougs fans. You'll take it.
Cougs fans are probably super excited about that as well. The program's heading in the right direction, and that's all you can really ask for from Houston. Let's start with the morning games when we move over to Saturday. One of the more intriguing matchups, and it ended up delivering. Cincinnati, Kansas. Ripped Sorsby pulls out the win 37-34, despite Jalen Daniels throwing 445 yards. These are, I would say, not two of the best teams in the Big 12, but certainly two of the most interesting on a week-to-week basis.
I mean, they're maybe not the top shelf teams in this conference. I think, in all honesty, for me, it felt like Kansas was starting to get to that point. If they would have won this game, then maybe you throw their hat in the ring there. But at the end of the day, they're two of the most exciting teams to watch any given Saturday. Again, Jalen Daniels, 445 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns. The best part about it, Eric, he only had 19 completions. He threw for nearly 450 yards on 19 completions. Not to mention, LaShawn Williams had another solid day. I would have liked to see him get a little bit more carries. Only 10 carries, but for 64 yards. And 25 of those yards came on one single run. But again, Brendan Sorsby, man, Rip Sorsby, whatever you want to call him, 388 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no INTs. Normally, we're used to seeing Sorsby do it all on the ground. just 52 yards on the ground for him. Massive win for Cincinnati to start conference play.
Yeah, and Cyrus Allen, 128 yards in the air. By the way, Jalen Daniels, 500 all-purpose yards. 55 yards on the ground on 14 carries.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
500 on the dot, dude.
Yeah, 500
in a loss.
on the dot. About half of his passing yards going to Emmanuel Henderson Jr., the Alabama transfer over to Kansas. I know they were super, super high on him when he came over, and he's delivering. This is crazy. And this game was fun. I mean, this was, in my opinion, kind of like the epitome of Big 12 football, right? Where it's just like exciting, fun, like some of the weirdest plays that you'll see too. Like it was just a fun game. Kansas and Cincinnati. Another early game, Utah taking care of business. Actually, that was the afternoon game. It was UCF Kansas State that was the morning game.
There you go.
Kansas State finally looking like a football team. They just play UCF.
Welcome back to the win column.
Welcome back to the win column against a UCF team that, yes, let's just say record-wise started the season off pretty well, but most people would admit that they are near the bottom, if not at the bottom of the conference. But everybody was saying that about Kansas State as well. Not the most incredible game from Avery Johnson, but Dylan Edwards putting up 166 yards on the ground. Kansas State takes down UCF by 14, 34-20.
I mean, this is exactly what Kansas State was supposed to be all along, right? Maybe not record-wise in the way they win these football games, but ultimately this is offensively what they were supposed to look like. This is a ground-and-pound team. You saw it last year with DJ Giddens. Avery Johnson's your dual-threat guy. 266 yards on the ground today for Kansas State, or Saturday, excuse me. 2 touchdowns. Again, Dylan Edwards finding the end zone. Joe Jackson as well. Now, UCF, a little bit more of an interesting situation. Taven Jackson only completed 50% of his passes, $115 and an INT. I know he was dealing with an injury at a certain point in this game. I want to say right before halftime. So you got to certainly throw that in the mix and in the conversation as to maybe why UCF couldn't get the job done at the end of the day. But like we said already a couple of times, Eric, a win is a win in this conference. Right now, Kansas State now 1-1 in Big 12 play. Still a lot of work ahead for both of these teams, but Kansas State gets the edge. Kansas
State needed this win, probably more than anybody. This weekend, Kansas State needed a win. Not even necessarily to put them back into like contention, because again, we would not consider them with the Arizona States, with the TCUs or the Texas Techs of the world, but they need to be better than what they have been. And I think they can be. And the real test will be next week. They play Baylor. I know at the end of this, we always talk about who has the biggest opportunity to jump up. Them playing Baylor next week when Utah and Arizona State are on a bye, that's going to be a really big matchup for Avery Johnson and company. So it'll be interesting to see how they step up to that occasion, considering how they've played against a lot of subpar talent so far this season, besides week 0 against Iowa State, where they lost over in Ireland. Okay, I am going to get to the afternoon games now. I hate how these are listed out of chronological order. It really makes me upset. Get it together, ESPN. Also, don't call people the wrong schools on broadcast, but whatever. Getting into the afternoon slate, Utah, West Virginia, Baylor, Oklahoma State, 2 blowouts by 2 of the better teams.
You hear that? Utah scored another touchdown.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Utah 48-14 at West Virginia, Baylor at Oklahoma State. Listen, the post-Gundy era started off with a little bit of spunk, but eventually that fire got put out. Baylor 45, Oklahoma State 27. Where do you want to start out of those 2 games?
Oh, man. Well, let's start with Utah, man. Again, the Utes, Devin Dampier, they needed this, especially after what happened the other week against Texas Tech. Devin Dampier really stepped back up into the spotlight, 21 of 26, 237 through the air, 4 touchdowns. The one blemish, the INT, wish you could get that back. But I mean, it's not even so much what Utah did. It's what West Virginia didn't do. And that was put together any sort of offense through the air. I get it. If you have a commitment to running the football, sure, 261 yards on the ground, 48 attempts on the ground for West Virginia. But ultimately, you're just not going to win in this conference where there's so many elite offenses and so many elite quarterbacks if you're just going to run the football and you don't have an elite quarterback. And West Virginia does not have an elite quarterback by any means. Khalil Wilkins, 3 for 6 today. Jalen Henderson, 3 of 7 today. As a team, 6 of 13 through the air. It's never going to cut it in this conference.
No, it's just not. But like, here's the thing with West Virginia as well, is that I don't think anybody expected them to be competing this year. And so, like, to me, the moment that I stopped expecting them to go from like feisty to like, okay, was when they lost to Ohio at home, or I think that maybe that one was on the road. But when they lost to Ohio non-conference, exactly. I don't think it does matter. Utah, very, very interesting to see what's going to happen when they run into a good team again. Not this upcoming weekend, because it is a bye week for Utah. They'll be taking on Arizona State, who's also on a bye this weekend. The week after, they're going to be hosting that one. That is going to be an interesting measuring test for both teams. And whoever runs out with a victory there is going to put themselves in some pretty good positions. But I would say Utah, definitely, since they already have a conference loss, is in a much more desperate situation to win that game than Arizona State.
Yeah, 1000%. Like, this is a team in Utah that, yes, this is a nice win. It's a nice feel-good victory. At the end of the day now, if you have a loss as it stands right now, a couple weeks through conference play, you have work to do because the top shelf of this conference is really, really good. You're looking at teams that don't have a loss right now in this conference: in Iowa State, Arizona State, Texas Tech. Those are 3 juggernauts, I think, in this conference as it stands through the first 2-3 weeks of conference play. I know there's going to be some folks that probably disagree with that at the end of the day. But right now, those 3 teams are definitely ahead of the curve. I would say the next 2 teams behind them, TCU and Baylor. And Baylor, in all honesty, looked a little shaky today.
Yeah. I think Utah is in that category with them.
Yeah, 100%. That's my bad. I forgot Utah in it.
And the thing with the Texas Tech game is that, you look at the final score and it's like, whoa, but going into the fourth quarter and at the beginning of the fourth quarter, that was a close game. Like, that was not a game that Texas Tech had run away with early. And then they poured it on later in the game.
The issue for me in that game, though, when we're talking about Houston, or not Houston, when we're talking about Utah and Texas Tech, is that, like, Utah, you're at home. You have an elite coach. Will Hammond's in the game. No disrespect to Will Hammond, but you're not Baylor Morton, right? You're not the starting quarterback. So at the end of the day,
he was hooping though. That guy was making some plays.
There's no reason the number 16 or 17 team in the country at home with your quarterback, right, healthy, your offense, your stadium, your environment should lose the way that you did. Sure. I think Utah is, and again, I'll excuse myself, Utah 100% is in that conversation with Baylor and TCU as the next teams in terms of contention. But I would make the argument that all 3 of those teams still, they're looking up right now.
Sure. And I want to clarify, because I know there's already somebody who's typed a comment and made it. When you say do not have a loss in this conference, you mean conference play for Arizona
Conference play,
State.
Yeah, 100% conference play.
Yeah, conference play. Okay, the final thing that we're going to do is talk about the end of Saturday night. One great game, one bad game. Let's start with the bad one. You mentioned top shelf of the conference, Iowa State, number 14 in the country, proving exactly why they are and taking down the University of Arizona to hand them their first loss of the season. Surprise, surprise, Arizona plays some good competition, Totri, and they get blitzed.
Yeah, man, this is it. I get it. I get it, Arizona fans. This is what college football is all about, right? You start the year 3-0, not really playing anybody, and you start to puff your chest out a little bit. You start to like, okay, you know what? Maybe that shot at the Big 12 championship is not so far away. And then you play a team like Iowa State with Matt Campbell at the helm and Rocco Becht at quarterback, and like you said, you get blitzed. I mean, Iowa State was so disrespectful to the point that after their first touchdown of the game, said, screw it, let's go for 2. And they got it. 39-14 in this one. I just don't think the recipe for an Arizona victory here was Noah Fafita throwing the ball nearly 50 times. I think you have a really talented back in Ishmael Mahdi. It's criminal that he only got 13 carries. But I guess at the end of the day, like, Iowa State just jumped the gun. They were up so early that Arizona really had to abandon the run game. But Eric, after talking to a few U of A fans, it sounds like special teams is a major red flag for this Wildcat squad.
Yeah, when you look at the quarterback battle, 32 of 48 for Noah Fafita for 253 yards Rocco Becht, 14 of 20 for 243 yards.
He's
10
efficient, man.
less yards on 28 less attempts. And this is actually, honestly, it's funny because he doesn't throw the ball a lot. This is one of the less efficient games from Rocco Becht as far as completions go. We've seen him do like 19 of 20 this year. But this was without a doubt the Chase Sewell game. Number 0 had 4 receptions for 146 yards, torching the U of A secondary. Iowa State 5-0 on the season. Big game next weekend, not really for them, but for Cincinnati, who might have the biggest opportunity at home to take down Iowa State and to put themselves into a category or up a category, maybe more so than any other team next weekend. Before we get to next weekend, though, let's put a bow on this one. This game just wrapping up recently for us. Colorado and BYU. BYU comes back and takes this one 24-21 on the road. The number 25 team in the country had a couple massive plays, including a Bear Bachmeier scramble on 3rd and long before they converted on 4th and short. Little trickery, a touchdown, and that was all she wrote at the end of the day. When BYU went up, they made it count. Colorado played decent, but at the end of the day, BYU got it done.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, Chase Roberts returning for another year at BYU, found the end zone twice in this one. I love LJ Martin as a running back in this conference. 15 carries, 58 really hard yards earned. But the story of this one for me is Bear Bachmeier, right? That we've been waiting for him to be tested. And not to say Colorado is like a legitimate test in the standing of college football as it stands right now in 2025. But at the end of the day, you're on the road against a Power 4 team. We know what that environment is, right, at Folsom Field. Bear Bachmeier, super efficient, nearly 180 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no INTs, also nearly 100 yards on the ground. My one note for Colorado here is get the ball to a Marion Miller. What is the struggle to get your best player the football? You see it, the best teams in college football, they do it, right? The best teams in the NFL, they do it. The best teams in high school do it. You get your best athlete, your best player, we get him the football. 1 catch for 19 yards today for Marion Miller. It's never going to be, again, a recipe for success in this conference, man.
Yeah, I think sometimes you point to coaching with that. With this one, I think you got to point to the quarterback. I believe it was pretty late in that game. Miller was wide open. Salter was looking at him, and then he looked the other direction instead of throwing it. And the camera zoomed in on Dion. Dion was saying he's wide open. He's wide open. I mean, listen, man, it's a learning curve for Colorado. I know that a lot of people had a lot to say about Shedeur Sanders, and he wasn't a perfect quarterback, but he was a good quarterback, and obviously a lot has changed for Colorado. The interesting thing with BYU, like you mentioned, is this isn't the best team, but this is the best team that they've played so far this season.
They're finding ways to win. So that's all that matters in college football is that you continue to win football games on the road in against a conference opponent, right? Like that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day. I know we got to move on to next week. Before we do that real quick, I just want to say, I don't know how much we touched on Baylor, Oklahoma State. Sawyer Robertson was phenomenal again today, 393 yards, 4 touchdowns, no INTs. Like
the Sawyer Robertson story.
He is Baylor. Oklahoma State found a way to put up 27 points. Again, that Baylor defense does not look great if this is what's happening from Oklahoma State offensively. They're finding ways to put up nearly 30. A bad team, bad program right now. But Baylor gets another win.
Yep. Sawyer Robertson is just Sawyer Robertson. I guess there's really no other way to put it.
Facts, dude.
BYU ranked number 25 in the country. TCU ranked number 24 in the country. I think it's pretty safe to say TCU likely dropping out of the top 25. Yeah. How do you feel about BYU in the top 25?
At this point, you're not going to kick them out. You're not going to boot them. I think BYU certainly moves up probably 2 or 3 spots. I think the unfortunate thing for a lot of teams in the AP top 25 as it stands right now and the teams looking to get in is a lot of the teams on the back end ended up winning their ball games, right? A lot of the losses for the AP top 25 teams were either in the early teens or actually in the top 10, right? You had Penn State lose at home, a big one to Oregon today. Georgia lost at home against Alabama. So Florida State lost the other day. You had a lot of top 10 teams lose today. I believe LSU lost as well. So it's going to be interesting to see the shuffle in there. I think BYU obviously still remains a top 25 team. I think Arizona State definitely jumps the gun here. They get in. They would have loved Mississippi State to beat Tennessee. That one went to overtime. You just had a great slate of college
It was a
football
great day.
today.
Yeah, it was a great day college football, an even better day when your team wins on Friday.
That's
But
facts.
what about next weekend? Who has the biggest opportunity to jump in the Big 12 next weekend? I know we'll do our Big 12 power rankings a little bit later, but just looking ahead, who's got the biggest opportunity?
I mean, the biggest opportunity, bar none, here for me is Houston.
Yeah.
Like you had a bad game, you ultimately got the job done. You just played in a really, really tough environment. A lot of folks don't realize how difficult it is to go into Corvallis and win there against Oregon State. I don't care what the program looks like now, but you're 4-0, you're 1-0 in conference play. And you have the team that I think everybody views as the best team in this conference right now, Texas Tech, coming to town. A top 12, potentially a top 10 team in the country, depending on how things swing out Sunday morning with the rankings. So if Houston can give Texas Tech a fight, hell, if they can win that football game, Houston's legit. Houston's for real, especially with Texas Tech coming off a bye week. So that's my case. But a lot of interesting games. Who do you think could be the biggest riser next week?
I mean, it's definitely Houston. I think there are two other contenders for teams that can make a statement this weekend. I think Cincinnati clearly in that second spot, hosting
Yeah.
Iowa State at home, 9 a.m. kickoff there. Cincinnati loves those early kickoffs. Sometimes they can be a little bit surprising in those games. That's going to be a really, really interesting one because Cincinnati has had some really potent offensive performances so far this season, but they have not played anybody like Iowa State. Iowa State as well, you look at the teams that they've played too. I mean, they beat Iowa. That's great. Iowa's not a top tier team in the country, obviously. You beat Kansas State in week one, and Kansas State isn't looking that great. Other than that, it's South Dakota, Arkansas State, and Arizona, all who are not great either. Cincinnati is a better team than Arizona. This is likely the second best team that they faced all season. Depending on how you view Iowa, they might be better.
Yeah.
This is the biggest test for Iowa State, which, by the way, the Hawkeyes are 3-2 after taking Indiana basically to the brink earlier today. So Cincinnati kind of has a chance to make a statement here, and Iowa State also has a chance to make a statement and say, listen, I get that the Texas Tech hype is real, but 6-0 and another win, and if it's a dominant win on the road this time, then Iowa State might have a conversation to be in the top 10.
Yeah, I think that is 1000% fair. Before we get out of here, just want to kind of rattle off what we have through the first couple weeks in terms of Big 12 standings. I know it's super early. I know things obviously swing a lot of different ways, but as it stands right now, your top two teams in the Big 12 after the first several weeks of conference play are Iowa State at 2-0 in conference play, and Arizona State at 2-0 in conference play, followed by BYU, Houston, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati, all sitting at 1-0 in conference play. Everybody else sits behind them there, with Colorado at 0-2 and West Virginia at 0-2, bringing up the rear.